Hello and welcome to The Cloister. Today I'm joined by Graham Stevens, author of our 2024 Advent Devotional. Together we discuss the devotional alongside the spiritual practice of pilgrimage. I pray that this is a blessing to you. Could you start just by introducing yourself?
Yes, certainly. As you say, I'm Graham Stevens, and I was ordained into the Christian ministry in 1979. I've been involved in church ministry right up to the present day, where I'm currently serving as an elder at Christ Church Baptist Church. I also have the great privilege of having you as my son.
Good. So I can stop calling you Graham now and start calling you Dad.
That's right.
So, Dad, the theme of this year's devotional is Journeys and Advent Pilgrimage. Talk to us a little bit about how did that theme come to be?
Well, I think for me, pilgrimage itself started just over 10 years ago when you and I sat down and watched that famous film, The Way. And we've seen it quite a few times since. But that gave birth in my mind and heart to the whole idea of actually doing a pilgrimage. And in 2016, we started the St. Francis Walk to Santiago. And we did it over 4 stages, 4 sections, and completed it. Since then, we walked the Camino from Porto to Santiago. And most recently, with my lovely wife, Pauline, we did the part from Sarria to Santiago and met with you en route towards the end. That was really exciting. And it was really out of finishing just this last fairly short route that the whole idea of the fact that we're on a pilgrimage ourselves, aren't we, really? Our life, spiritually and so on. And I thought how good it would be to reflect pilgrimage and journeying during the Advent season, because when you look back, the very first Advent season consisted of a lot of people taking a journey. And the kind of two seem to marry up quite nicely. Hence, here we are, journeys.
Thank you. So, what can people expect from this devotional?
I would hope that they would find this devotional to be something that would just enable them to rest up a while and to consider really what is fairly basic, fairly simply, the first story of Advent, the birth of Jesus Christ, the characters that were involved in the story. And Journeys is about that, really. It's just focusing on lots of different people like Zachariah, Elizabeth, Joseph and Mary, of course, and as well as people like Simeon and Anna and others who were all involved in the story, played a part in it in some way or another, and just tracking very briefly, very simply, their journey in that first Advent. And from them, learning particular lessons, perhaps about their character, about what they experienced, about what they learned as well. Stuff that we can, I think, quite simply apply to our own lives.
So it's daily reflections, isn't it, from
It is.
Monday to Saturday?
Yes, that's right. 6 a week.
And then on Sunday, we've included the lectionary readings from the Church of England to help you just have something to kind of read on a Sunday. And then alongside that, there's also images for Visio Divina of traditional art, just to maybe give you a moment of pause and contemplation as you're moving through Advent. So moving away for a moment from the devotional,
Yes.
just to the spiritual practice of pilgrimage. What has pilgrimage meant to you as a spiritual practice?
Right. In general terms, before we just focus particularly on the spiritual side of it, I think for me, pilgrimage has simply been to provide an escape. I think we live incredibly busy lives, particularly in the Western world, and it's very great just to be able to kind of have a physical, literal escape from that rush and bustle of everyday life and to get into nature and into a sense of peace and a sense of quiet, really, which you just don't get when you're involved in your everyday working life. So I think that was important. I think spiritually, and I reflect particularly on our first pilgrimage to Santiago, and you remember we reached a place just after Fonsabaden called Cruz de Ferro. a very significant place where there's a cross, an iron cross. And the idea is that it is somewhere where pilgrims are encouraged to lay down a stone or something else, perhaps that they have brought back from their hometown, from their home, which is something important in their life, which maybe they need to just let go of. And I think for me, one of the most important spiritual occasions for me on pilgrimage was that very moment when at the Cruise to Pharaoh, I laid down a stone. Without going into all the details, there were circumstances in my life which I needed to let go of in order to then begin to enjoy the freedom that would mean I could continue my spiritual life journey unhindered, unburdened, which those circumstances had caused. And so what I did was just take a smooth stone, which I carried all the way from home, and just let it, I can remember it now, I can picture it, just filter through my fingers onto that big pile of stones that have been laid by other pilgrims, and just knew what it was to weep before God and to have that issue, those circumstances just released, or let me put it this way, for me to be released from them as I handed them over to God. And I think that is one of the great blessings of being on a pilgrimage. There is time to be still, there is time to reflect, there's time to think about our lives, where it's going, where it's been, and to communicate with God in perhaps a deeper level than we do ordinarily, because simply there isn't the time to do that. So I think that for me was important, and I think that answers the question.
It does, thank you. So obviously, yeah, we've done the Camino now a few times, but pilgrimage doesn't have to be that grand, does it?
No, it doesn't.
A
No.
pilgrimage is kind of, I always think that a pilgrimage is more about the intent of the journey
Mm,
rather than the destination. Like,
yeah.
yes, there are places that are spiritually significant, such as, the tomb of St. James.
Mm,
But actually, I think if people maybe can't get on a pilgrimage route,
yeah.
but just actually going for a walk with that intent of
Yeah.
walking with God can be a good, almost like a starting point, really, for exploring pilgrimage.
Mm, mm.
Um, what advice would you give to people who are maybe new to this idea of pilgrimage?
I think to think seriously about the possibility of doing a pilgrimage. It's not that difficult, and as you rightly say, it doesn't have to be a huge thing. It doesn't have to be, a 500-mile trip to Santiago. It can be a pilgrimage close to home. It can be going on, setting yourself on a walk from A to B that might only be 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. But as you said, it's thinking about what you want to do with that pilgrimage. Um, I remember the words of a beautiful Franciscan sister that we met on our recent pilgrimage. And she said, "Pilgrims walk on foreign lands." Well, we don't actually have to do that. But we're not owners of the land. We're not owners of any person there. Pilgrims search for more and just keep on walking, remembering that the goals of this world are not our final goal. And you'll find there's a little note somewhere in our journeys that talk about what the Swedes do. They don't look for a place. They don't always even look for a sacred person, because often pilgrimage is, as you say, to somebody important and sacred like St. James. But it's the journey that we take and communing with nature. And also, I think there's another element. It's communing with other people,
Mm,
because that's one of the great benefits I found on pilgrimage, meeting other people, sharing their stories with you, and you sharing yours with them. And a fairly deep level sometimes,
yeah.
which is quite an interesting thing for strangers, but it happens, I suppose. We're not going to meet much in the future, maybe, and perhaps there's confidence in doing that. But I think that's important too. So I would say just think about it, think about all the benefits that can be yours to experience, and go for it. Just get out there and walk. Contact somebody like yourself. There's plenty of other information out there about pilgrimage in this country,
Mm,
from one place to another, short or long.
yeah.
Just do it, really.
Yeah, there's the British Pilgrimage Trust, which I'll put a link to in the show
Right.
notes, and I'll share that on
Yeah.
social media when we release this podcast.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I mean, in England, we're very fortunate. We have lots of sacred spaces that we can
Mm,
go on pilgrimage to.
mm,
Wonderful, thank you. So, just to conclude, then our time together. So, going back to the devotional Journeys in Advent
mm.
Pilgrimage, it's available at the moment
Right.
from the Monastic Retreats website, which will take you through to Amazon. We're selling these through Amazon, who will print them and then ship them to you directly. But then also there will be a podcast, won't there?
Ah, they will.
So yeah, the other week, Dad and I recorded the all of the daily readings in a podcast, which will be released every day throughout
Mm, mm,
Advent. So if you want a paper copy, you can get that from our website, order them through Amazon, or if you would just like to listen along, they'll
mm.
be available as a separate
Mm.
podcast, which we will make known to you. So
Brilliant.
thank you for writing these
You're
devotionals.
welcome. It's been a delight.
Thank you for joining us today on The Cloister. New episodes are released every fortnight. We hope that you will join us again soon. God bless you.